Alright, in this video we're going to be replacing a pinion seal on a 2006 F-250, and we're also taking out the drive shaft to get the center bearing replaced. This particular drive shaft has quite a bit of corrosion on it, so I'm going to take this one to a driveline shop. I don't have a hydraulic press, so rather than risk damaging something or injuring myself, I'm going to take it to a driveline shop. They only wanted 150 bucks to do it, so money well spent. So we're going to pull the drive shaft. This particular drive shaft is a two-piece design, again with that center bearing in the middle. It's held on to the rear axle on the pinion flange by 12.12 millimeter bolts. So I got that set up on my socket set. And at the transmission, there is a slip yoke, so that just yanks right out. And again, that center bearing, that's held on by a couple of rather small looking bolts, so that shouldn't be too tough. We're going to take the drive shaft apart in two pieces because it probably won't fit in my truck as one piece, but we'll see. Alright, so front of the vehicle we have some lighting. Now you can see these are the bolts that need to come out here, and there's two on the other side. Here is the center bearing that we suspect is bad. And we suspect it's bad because there's a bit of movement there. You see when I move the drive shaft around, it's not solid like it should be. And on the transmission side, you can see over there, turn the light around, it's just a slip yoke. So we just got to take bolts there, and those four bolts, the whole thing should slide right out. And I mentioned I'm going to take it apart in two pieces. The two sections come apart like that. Now with drive shafts though, you want to make sure you mark them so you can get them back together in the same position. So I'm going to use some paint to do that. Alright, so I got the whole drive shaft marked so we know the orientation for reassembly. Just use these paint marks, a bit of Glidden sealing paint. So now we're going to start by taking off those bolts. Alright, so I got all the bolts loose except for three removed except for this bottom one here, just to kind of hold things in place until I'm ready to remove it. What probably helped a lot was soaking these bolts overnight in penetrating oil. They really weren't that difficult, and they do have a bit of rust on them, so I would highly recommend soaking these overnight in penetrating oil before you try this job. Okay, of course I forgot to soak these bolts, so we'll go after those next. Let's see. Those look like maybe 18s. Grab a couple sockets, we'll give it a go. Might do this one with the impact gun, just because I have a clear line of sight. Be a lot easier. This is what the drive shaft bolts look like. Like I said, they're just 12 millimeter bolts. Ford uses these bolts on just about every rear axle they've produced in recent past. I think these same bolts fit the 8.8. This is a 10.5 inch Sterling or a Visteon. It's a very, very common part number. It's used for many, many, many years. So they do recommend replacing these bolts every time you pull the drive shaft, or at the very least replacing the coat of Loctite that should be on there and is now worn off. And with my luck, it's starting to rain. Lovely. So I got my 18-inch socket, hopefully that's the right size, chucked up on the Ingersoll Rand 3/8 impact gun. Got the air turned on, so let's go to town. Please let this be the right size. Watch the gardenia. Actually, let's go around it like that. You guys don't really want to watch me pull this hose out. What am I doing? There's one bolt. Good size. Good shape. And remember, I left this bolt at the pinion attached so this thing doesn't fall on my face. It's probably a heavy drive shaft. I'm just going to loosen this one because I want to take this drive shaft apart so it's easier to deal with. You can see it just dropped as soon as I loosened that. So I think we'll leave it about like that, and that'll give me room to get the bolts off this yoke here. So that looks like maybe an 8 millimeter wrench, so let me go grab a wrench. 8 millimeter it is. And I want to be careful here not to take this apart, because otherwise this long section here will drop on my head. They are pretty tight, and they have Loctite on too to make things more interesting. So I'll take all these off and pick it up. This GoPro is locked up on me 3 times so far in the last 2 minutes. I'm tired of this piece of shit. Does anybody recommend a better camera than this freaking GoPro Hero 7 Black? Don't understand why cameras have to lock up just like my computer does. Yes, I know they're computers. Anyway, back to the task at hand. I got all the bolts out of the yoke right here near the center support. I left, actually I took 2 out and left 2 loose, just so we can kind of separate these 2 drive shaft halves without it falling down on us. There we go, that's exactly what we wanted to happen. So we popped it loose, and it's just sitting right there in that last yoke. So I'm gonna take those 2 bolts out. Now I take that last bolt out at the pinion. We'll take this drive shaft down in a very controlled manner, because it's probably quite heavy. All right, we got the back half of the drive shaft dangling now, so I just got to remove that last bolt there, and it should be down. Okay, back half of the drive shaft is down. Now when we get to the pinion seal portion, that nut has to come off. The pinion seal is located underneath that flange right there. It seals the differential fluid into the axle. So that'll be a follow-up video, I think, because this drive shaft is got to go to the driveline shop, and it's starting to rain. All right, so next we have to finish taking the center section or center support off, which is loose, and you'll notice I have a pan underneath the transmission. When we pull that slip yoke out of the transmission, some fluid will dribble out, so that's just to catch it, keep it from dripping on the driveway. So really there's just 1 bolt holding this whole thing in right now, so we'll take that out. All right, time to pull that last bolt. I got things cleaned up a little bit under here, so it's not such a freaking mess. I'll take this out. I'm gonna hold it with one hand. I'm gonna hit it with the impact with the other. So forgive me guys, I don't think you're gonna have to see this thing fall out. All right, the drive shaft is laying on my stomach right now, and you can see the transmission fluid is slowly dripping out, so we'll leave this pan here just to catch anything. So, off to the driveline shop. All right, so we got the drive shaft back for the F-250. The drive shaft was rebuilt by Driveshaft Power Inc. up in Lake Worth, Florida. They did an amazing job. They installed all new U-joints, 3 of them in total. The new bearing, center bearing, which was the reason we brought it there to begin with. They painted and balanced the whole thing as well. They said the balance was pretty far off, especially the transmission yokes. They welded on some balancing weights, and they even marked it for us so we know the orientation you need to install it in. We got new mounting bolts. This mounts it to the pinion yoke flange. A new nut, and a new pinion seal, and a new strap and bolt kit. So if anybody needs the part numbers, again, this is for 2006 F-250, but similar years should be the same part numbers. So that's for the strap and bolt kit for Moog. This is for the nut. This is the bolts. I'm sorry, no, that's the pinion seal. And that's the bolts there. You can see the workmanship is quite nice. These are all brand new Spicer joints. This particular shop is all they do is restore drive shafts to OEM specs. So they did really nice work. Oh, in total out the door, including tax, was about 420 bucks or so. So not bad at all. A lot cheaper than a brand new drive shaft, even if you can find one.